Right now on Tech Radio, Google is on the make.
Hi, I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
Every week online and on air with RT Radio, we bring you the latest in tech from Ireland and across the world. You're welcome to episode 1031. Looking back on the 7 biggest stories of the week, including new toys from Google and toys being thrown from the pram of Mr. Musk.
From TechCentral.ie, this is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
I'm Dusty. Joining me as always is our editor-in-chief, Niall Kitson. We'll get to Musk later. The biggest story of the week, I think, is made by Google. Were you impressed?
Yes, is the short version. I was.
70%. A solid B minus.
Well, I'd go a little bit better. I'd give it a solid B. I thought the audience in part makes these things, which is why I would always mark down Apple's recent announcements, because they're just TV shows.
Yeah.
I thought the audience was respectful. You know, they didn't go too crazy, but they did like what they saw.
And then also it was live, I noticed, because something went wrong at one part.
Yeah, something went wrong. There was a command to Gemini that didn't work on one phone but worked on another. And that's a really important thing to happen, because Google said all the way through, look, this is live, our demos are live, there's nothing, prepared about any of this. And it was really important. And the fact that one of the things didn't work, I think actually worked in their favor, because it really sort of reinforced that, well, yeah, and sometimes things don't work. And that's why we have updates. And that's why, we change things every so often. So I actually thought it worked in their favor. What did you make of it?
I thought it was kind of okay. It's kind of more of the same. But they did bring out one thing, which we'll talk about when we get to the watch, which I thought was brilliant. And the more I think about it, the more I think it's brilliant and useless. And why haven't we had this for years? But I'll tell you more about that in a few minutes. The other thing I thought was I kind of liked, not for me, but I liked the fact that they've got the regular phone. Okay, the Pro, that's the one, of course, I would have to have, right? But they do the Pro in a regular size as well as kind of an extra large size. Now, I'd have to have the extra large size. I just like that largeness about a phone. But to know that do you know the way they always reserve all the Pro features for the biggest phone? If you don't want to be carrying around a 6.8-inch phone or whatever in your pocket, and you want to have all of those Pro features, they do that with Google. I thought that was quite good.
Yeah, that's one thing I will give them props on for the Pixel 9, Pixel 9, Pixel 9 Pro, and Pixel 9 Pro XL that they announced. If you want a lower price version, a 9A, if you will, it would be a couple of months hence, because that's what Google do these days. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. All the specs for the Pro and the Pro XL were the same, except for just that screen size, that 0.5 inches of screen real estate, and a slightly better battery, which you would expect, but otherwise identical. So the difference between the 9 and the 9 Pro, I thought was, okay, again, screen size, or either screen resolution, that's fine. The battery is exactly the same. The camera is exactly the same, except the 9 and the 9 Pro have a 48 megapixel telephoto lens added. So the 9 has basically two cameras, a main camera and an ultra wide, and of course a selfie camera as well. And the Pro and the Pro XL add that telephoto lens as well. So there's like 3 cameras in the back of that, as opposed to 2 with the regular 9 model. They all use the same processor. The 9 has 12 gigs of RAM. The Pro and the Pro XL have 16. The numbers that we're getting up to with RAM, is quite remarkable.
No, but, I don't agree, because I think, what I mean is that a smartphone these days, especially a high-end smartphone, you have to have 16 gigs. It's like, that's not a nice to have. That's a must have these days. If you're not putting 16 gigs in,
Okay.
you're not a real phone.
That's, ooh, shots fired there. I mean, if you think about what's
Hmm?
running your laptop at the moment, the chances are it's either 4 or 8 gigs of RAM.
Yep.
And, you know,
No,
it's
no. Well, okay, well then, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't use a laptop, and I wouldn't use a computer without anything less than 16 gigs of RAM,
okay.
because I think you can get away. You can't use a machine these days with 4 gigs of RAM. Forget it. All right, you'll just be sitting there looking at the thing, pulling your hair out. If you've got 8 gigs of RAM, you'll probably manage and get by. But if you
Hmm.
want the thing to run nicely, you've got to be running 16 gigs. And that applies to a phone as much as it does to a laptop or a desktop.
Oh, okay, right. Interesting perspective.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't use an awful lot of media applications, strangely enough, on my laptop. So the lower RAM suits me fine. But of course, you use sort of media applications all the time between,
Well,
editing and whatnot.
yeah, on the on computers I do, not so much on the phone. I don't do so much
Yeah.
editing on the phone, but I like the phone to kind of zip along, like, and particularly
Mm,
when I'm buying a laptop and stuff like that. Like, I do like to have 16 gigs, and it's actually not that easy to find a laptop that's spec'd with 16 gigs.
it's true.
But
Yeah, yeah.
But when I find one and I get it, it absolutely powers along, and I'm delighted with it. And then some of the tablets these days, they sell themselves as having 12 gigs of RAM, which they do, plus another, and they say I think another 8 or something like that or whatever, where they're using some of the SSD is reserved for RAM like access.
Mm, yeah,
And they power
yeah.
along as well. So that's kind of really good. The other thing that really kind of caught my attention as well, phones wise, was the Google Foldable.
Hmm.
Now, I haven't paid much attention to Google's first foldable, which they announced last year, or was it 2 years ago? I can't remember.
2 years ago, we got the first
Two
fold.
years ago, right? And then, but Samsung is the first one that comes to mind, right? And every time I have a Samsung foldable in my hand, I just go, no,
Hmm.
no, too big, too bulky, too blah 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 blah. They made a really big thing at the presentation for Google this year to say that the foldable phone is super slim. So each side of the phone, when you open it up, is literally the height of a USB-C connector.
Yeah.
And when you put the two of them together, the phone's thickness is 10 millimeters, whereas a regular smartphone's width or height, thickness is 7 millimeters. So the question is, and I really want to get my hands on one of these Google Folds, is to see if 3 millimeters makes a difference.
Mm, mm.
So that's kind of what's in my head, because if it doesn't make a difference and it feels like, isn't it funny how we as human beings, do you know what I mean? Just that sense and that touch and that feel and the weight. Smartphones are they're all so similar. Do you know what I mean? Like the Samsung
Mm.
and the Oppo and and Google's phone and the iPhone, and they're all a certain size. You've got a larger, you've got a regular, and they're all very similar size and weight, and we're used to that.
Yeah.
But then if you put something heavier in my hand, I'm like, oh, I don't like that. Why? Why is that? Maybe it's just a human thing. I'm not sure. But yes, I would really like to get my hands on that foldable, because if it feels like a regular smartphone, yet I can open it up and have 8 inches of screen at my disposal at any given time, I think I might. I've just remembered the price. I
Go on, go on. What was the price again?
the price is like €1,800.
Okay, okay.
If
Well,
if
that
not
meant,
more, I'm just kind of looking at the dollar price on that. It's $2,000
yeah.
for the phone. I'm kind of thinking, maybe I won't do that.
Okay.
But I will
Let,
be tempted to consider it though.
okay. Well, let's just run the prices then on the rest of the phones, just for context. I mean, the base model, the 9 on its own, these are dollar values.
Mm.
799, the 9 Pro 999,
Okay.
the 9 Pro XL 1099, which are kind of, in terms of steps up, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
You would wonder, okay, where's that first €200 coming from?
Mm.
Well, for the answer is the LTPO 3000 nit display. That's it's all about the display. Always look to display in the battery whenever there's a price discrepancy. But there you go. That's where the extra money is, and of course the extra camera, which I suppose between an extra camera, better screen, and a better the same battery, I suppose. So you're looking at an extra camera and a better screen. That's still, you would understand why that's an extra 200. But let me throw a bit of nostalgia your way when listening to your criticisms of the Fold. Let me remind you of your favorite phone once upon a time.
It was the Note, yeah, and it was huge.
Yeah, the Note, which was basically 7-inch tablet, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't that
basically.
Big. No, I think it was in and around kind of that 6.8 inch. Like the large phones today, the Note was similar to that. Thickness, it was similar to that as well. It was able to fit the pen into it. Yes, it was big, but not as big as the Fold. Absolutely not as big as the Fold.
Okay.
So, but I'd like to try. Listen, do you know what I was going to ask you about? Is and we get on to watching the buds in a minute, but I mean, the phones is one thing. The software is the whole other thing. So we had all kinds of announcements with Gemini and how that will interact with software with the phone. What impressed you on that side of things?
What impressed me was, I suppose, their take on it. In the same way that, we've talked about Samsung Knox before and how, as a piece of software, it's more interested in how you use your phone than, trying to give you any information or anything like that. And that's very much what Gemini is there to do. It's basically like Siri Plus, if you want to look at it that way. It's all about maximizing your personal productivity, but also doing some fairly swish things with language, for example, as well. And one of the things I thought was very funny in the presentation when they were talking about Gemini, because Gemini is built into everything now. I mean, that's just the way Google are doing their products. And they were very keen to stress that Gemini was available in 200 countries in 45 languages, compared with Apple Intelligence, which is available in one country, the US, in one language. US English.
Meow.
There you go.
Meow.
Well, that's what they've gotten good at. And another point that Google made about Gemini that the competition doesn't do is that they say when using Gemini, your information stays with Google. It doesn't go. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
So it's super private. It'll only be shared with a couple of million
super
people.
Private. Yeah, super private. But most importantly, it doesn't go to a third party you may not trust. So you remember what Apple Intelligence, they were like, hey, we've partnered with OpenAI to bring ChatGPT to Apple. And there was fair bit of hooping and clapping at the time. And I think both of us had little alarm bells going, oh God, they actually couldn't make one of these things themselves. So they partnered with another company that has a massive investor in Microsoft. They put in 10 billion, wasn't it? Who is going to handle pick up the slack when it comes to their AI or lack thereof. So I thought it was funny that in talking up Gemini, the background was always, I bet Apple Intelligence can't do that.
There's a lot of things actually that Apple Intelligence can't do. Apple Intelligence. You're such an Apple fanboy. Do you know what I mean? You actually call it Apple Intelligence. Oh my God.
That's what they call it.
I know that's what they call it. But I mean, kind of Twitter is called X, but nobody calls it X.
No.
Yeah,
well, except for one guy. Maybe two people.
Get to him in a minute. I thought there was one or two interesting things with Gemini and the software, if you like, which they made a big thing of, and everybody jumped on and went, this is amazing. And now I'm kind of going, there were three things actually in particular, and none of them I'm kind of thinking after having a good night's sleep, I'm not as excited about it. All right. The first one is they had a thing called Add Me In with the camera. So, when you're out and you have a photo and you want to take a selfie of you and your mates and all that kind of stuff, blah, 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 and you have to extend your arm or there's an art to doing it, all right? So
Yeah.
it brought this Add Me In where essentially you can stand there and take a photo of everybody. Then one person from everybody comes over to you, takes the phone, and then you get into the photo. And the phone will tell you where to stand. And then it takes a photo of you and it butches the two things together so that everybody's in the photo at the same time. Yay!
It just treats it as two layers and slaps them together.
It does. But would you be bothered? I mean, I was looking at it going, wow, that's cool. Oh, love that. That's really good. And I had a good night's sleep. And I went, oh, would you be bothered?
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. What is it they say? 80% of people will only use 20% of the features.
But now that is actually very true because almost everything they were talking about with photo editing and with videos and the phone, it can do blah, 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 blah. All I can think of is creator, okay?
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot more creators in the world and putting, kind of content of varying quality onto all of the social media platforms and stuff like that. But there's still only a small percentage of the of the population.
Absolutely.
And all of these features are kind of like creative features. So, I don't know.
That point that you made brings it back for me to Windows 8. I think it was Windows 8. Creators Edition. This was meant to be the great update that everyone would go, oh, wow, you can do all this other stuff. Nobody's interested. I mean, a phone is ultimately a phone first and all the other stuff is nice. Don't focus on all the other stuff because, creators are a loud cohort, but they're a small one. And, most of them want stuff for free.
Well, that's very true. So Add Me In. I thought that was a nice feature, but would you really? The other one that I liked, okay, and then I really worried about it after a night's sleep, was call notes. And essentially, what it will do is it will monitor your call. It will, I presume, transcribes it to itself in the background. And then after your call, it will give you notes as to what was said and who said it and the usual kind of stuff that you will get with an AI or some kind of a transcription service. And you mentioned just a few minutes ago about Google keeping all of their AI queries within itself, and that's super safe. Do you really want Google listening to your phone calls just so it can make notes for you?
Yeah. And what happens to those? I mean, we make this joke. We made this joke at the last Apple thing when it came to location logging as to, where were you? I mean, do you want every conversation you have in transcribable or summarizable form? And very often you just want to ring someone to bitch about them,
There you go.
Somebody has annoyed you and you just want to vent.
Yeah, and then somebody gets into your phone or whatever accidentally or however happens to be, and then they see the notes. They don't even have to. So it's interesting how, as a society, we seem to be giving up our privacy in return for the toys.
Oh, willingly.
Call notes, great. Yeah, sure, I don't mind listening to every call that I'm making. And I'm a tin hatter to a certain extent, all right? So I love the features and I love the technology and I think it's fantastic, but it's kind of like somebody, and of course, nobody cares, all right? If you look at my life and everything that I'm doing, nobody cares. There's very little of interest in there, all right? But if I decided to have a row with my brother and say, right, he's finished, I'm going to kill him, and then I murder him. Yeah. And then I go on the run. Then the Gardaí are going, no, would you have the password for his Google account? We'll try and break it. Oh, hang on, there's some call notes here. Oh, look, he looked up how to stab somebody and get away. And you see these things in the stories. It's like that guy who was done for, or arrested, I should say, for the Taylor Swift concert in Vienna. And within hours, they were saying he did a Google search recently for blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
that's almost one of the first things that's always reported, somebody's browser history.
Exactly. Now, is it going to get to a stage where, kind of you're driving home one evening and the guard is at the check just rolls down the window and he says, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. is he able to go off somewhere and do a check on stuff you've done based purely on your car license plate? Obviously not at the moment, but could be in the future if we keep giving up this privacy.
That's a GDPR nightmare, that is. You've got to show just cause for looking for the information that you want.
Yes, of
so
course.
You're safe enough there.
You know what, Niall? There's the law, and then there's what really happens.
Oh, Dusty, your tinfoil hat it's well and truly on.
The third thing with Google where I kind of went, that's amazing. And then I had a good sleep and went, it's with the watch.
The watch?
Everybody's raving on the watch with this new feature of loss of pulse detection. Now, this is an amazing feature, okay? You've got the watch on your wrist all the time.
Yeah.
If the watch detects that you have no pulse, it will give a warning. And then it will have a countdown. And if at the end of that countdown, no action has been taken, i.e. you're dead or incapacitated in some way, it will then call the emergency services with your location.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I would be more inclined to have it ring like a safe person or a next of kin or something like that.
I'm sure you could probably set it up that way. Yeah. Just have a little thing in there.
Because fall detection isn't new. Like fall detection has been with us for ages. So lack of pulse detection is sort of, okay, yeah, that makes sense as a logical next, a logical progression in the technology. That's fine.
I know, but I was thinking about it. I was going, who needs this? Because if you think about all the people that you've known in your life or that you've read about who've passed away, okay? A lot of them will have been at home, surrounded by their family, if they're lucky. A lot of them would have been in a hospital or maybe in a hospice, surrounded by medical people. Maybe something drastic happened when they were out and about and they were in an accident or collapsed or something like that. They'd be surrounded by people.
Yeah.
You know, so who needs a watch that's going to go, whoa, no pulse, I need to call somebody? Like, so where are you going to be that you're going to be on your own?
So your lesson on this and looking at how necessary is a pulse detector, just die in public. Just die in public.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it sounds like a great idea, but then when you think about where people do die, mostly they're surrounded by people, so there's no need for a loss of pulse detection. However, I do think of elderly parents and stuff like that, and having it for them, fantastic if something was to happen in the house or something like that. Yeah. So I was kind of thinking, so it's a limited case use, but it's a great use, all right? And the other thing that I had in my head with it, which I've forgotten now.
Well, let's just mention that they now come in 41 and 45 millimeter screens and up to twice the brightness, if that's something that is a selling point for you.
That was the that was the watch, the buds. Very interesting with the buds.
Isn't it interesting that we're not happy enough with a phone reveal anymore? It has to cover phone, some class of phone plus device, a watch and buds. That's where we are now. If we're not getting all of that, we're not happy.
All right.
Well, what a demanding bunch we are.
Indeed. The buds have come out. They're 27% smaller, which is significantly smaller. That's nearly a third smaller. And I mean, the buds are okay, but I find them quite big in my ear when I'm going out. But they're okay, but they're a little bit big. So 27% smaller is interesting. They kept going on about the fact for the first time that they've put in a Tensor A1 chip inside. And because that chip is in there, they don't need a lot of the other electronics. And that's how it's able to be 27% smaller. And also because they've got the A1 chip in there, it's got much better noise cancelling. What really kind of piqued my interest, though, was that they said you can talk to Gemini in a natural conversation using the buds.
Right.
And that was pretty much all they said. There was nothing after that, or no real demonstration or whatever. And all I was thinking was, what was the humane pin?
Yeah.
that we were
Yeah.
talking about earlier in the year, which sounded like a great idea. A small pin that you just have on your chest and you just tap and you say, and you ask it a question, it gives you the answer. And then when it was released, it didn't do that. So now Gemini, the buds are coming out and they're effectively doing the same thing. You touch the buds in your ear, you ask a question and it'll give you a reply, or it'll read you an email, or will give you the directions to wherever it happens to be. But they didn't really go into showing us all about that. Which
Well,
made me go,
I mean, I would almost give them a pass on that because you remember when Apple did their AirBuds Pro demo a couple of years ago, and it was a woman who walked from one setting to another, and it became painfully obvious that she was just walking around a couple of green screens. And you're like, those so-called testing environments that they didn't exist. And we knew they didn't exist because the sound quality was too good. The whole point was I can go here, here, here and still listen to things. But we couldn't, the level of background noise didn't change at all. So it was kind of a moot point she was making. So I don't think there's an awful lot to be said about AirBuds, about, that particular product class in general.
Yeah.
I mean, it is pretty cool about putting the chip in there, so there's less physically going on because Samsung, when they did that sort of exploding view of their AirBuds and Apple as well with the AirPods, there is a lot going on in those things. There's like layers and layers of circuitry going on. So to actually remove some of those by using a tensor chip, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
It is incredible technology. And when you think about the sound and it's being recreated in there and the fact it's wireless and as you say, it's amazing technology. So overall, yes, we're impressed with the new Google phones. What Niall has not said, because I know he knows that I'm green with envy, is that he will have his paws on a Pixel 9 XL and he will be playing with it during the week, and we get a report on that next week on the podcast.
You're listening to Tech Radio 2024 from techcentral.ie.
Now we come to the part of the podcast that we call Musk Corner. What has
Hopefully
Elon been
not for
doing?
very long. I mean,
not for very long.
Well, what didn't he do? He's three big things happened this week. And to be honest, I don't think any of them went terribly well for him, but I don't think he cares because he's the world's richest man and he can do what he likes. And it doesn't matter how much things cost. So the first thing that happened during the week last Monday, of course, this is a Thursday as we're recording it. So it's a couple of days ago at this stage, but he had his conversation, very careful to call it a conversation, on X with former president of the United States, Donald Trump, of course, who is campaigning at the moment. Did it go well? Not really. Very important, as I said before, that he framed it as a conversation, not an interview, because basically you had two rich white guys talking to each other and saying how they're mutually brilliant. It's like, wow, great thing to devote, what was it, an hour plus my time. However, it started 45 minutes late. Musk attributed the delay to a DDoS attack, as if this is something that has never happened. I mean, Ron DeSantis launched his failed presidential campaign last year on X with a similar discussion, and the tech failed then as well. So we were assured that, look, lessons were learned. We will be able to scale the technology to meet demand, all this kind of thing. And no, that did not happen. Personally, I don't think that there was fantastic box office over this either. I mean, at one stage, there was 1.3 million people tuned in for this conversation between, as I said, two rich white guys. Hit about 1.3 million. I don't think that's terribly impressive in the grand scheme of things, bearing in mind that an awful lot of people that will have listened in will be doing it for either car crash value, and they've already decided, or because they're acolytes of Donald Trump. So, I mean, there's nothing to be gained in it, and 1.3 million is a little bit meh. So I wouldn't be too excited over that. The outcome of it, well, there was no zingers. there was nothing really of interest said, unless you are a member of the Auto Workers of America, the union representing the automobile industry, who have said, "Do you know what? We're going to sue you guys over your discussion about workers' rights, because you can't say that if you don't like what's happening, we will just fire you. That's not how employment works."
Mm.
So wonderful legal action arose from that discussion, which won't help either side.
No.
And then in the aftermath, people were sort of doing the both sides thing, and Musk said, "Well, we are happy to have Kamala on as well, or Kamala on as well." To which people said, "It's Vice President Harris." Thank you very much.
Whatever. That's splitting hairs. I think.
No, I think that was telling. It would be hostile ground, put it that way, and not terribly interesting.
Well, actually, do you know what? It would be a heck of a lot more interesting, wouldn't it, to hear Kamala with Musk? I'm really looking forward to the debate, because I think that she is a way better debater than he is.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So we will wait and see. But anyways, back to the discussion between the two. The two things that really caught my attention in their conversation was there was a bit of a love in where Musk was kind of going, "Oh, Donald, you're so brave with the assassination attempt and the way you handled it and everything." And then Trump says, "You're brilliant at firing people. You're one of the best cutters there is," as into cutting employment.
Yeah.
And he's not actually, I mean, yes, he can do that. But there was a case here in Ireland which was resolved during the week when Elon Musk took over Twitter. Essentially, he sent an email to everybody globally. And one of the people who got the email was here in Ireland. And they were basically told, "Hi, I'm the new boss. We are going to be doing X, Y, and Z over the coming years. You're going to have to work longer, harder, faster. All right. There's no word of whether you're going to get a pay increase or a pay decrease or whatever. So if you're in, you need to tick yes. And if you don't tick yes by 5 p.m., you are fired. You've got 3 months notice. It's your decision. Whatever you decide to do, I wish you the best of luck, blah, 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 blah." Can you imagine getting an email like that from your boss where they go, "You're going to work longer and harder. I'm not going to tell you what the salary is going to be. And if you don't agree by 5 p.m., you've got 3 months notice."
There's only a one-word answer to that.
Well, there you go. Anyways, this chap took exception to this. He didn't click yes. And he refused to go. And he took his case to I'm not too sure which court it was in Ireland, but anyway, he went to an Irish court with it and has walked out with €550,000.
Thank you very much.
Yes, well done to the judge for awarding that. That is no way to treat people. And the fact that there aren't a line of people lining up to get at Elon Musk for that now is beyond me. However, that was the conversation. Speaking of judges, Mr. Musk and Judge Reid O'Connor, tell me all.
Yeah, Judge Reid O'Connor, you might remember, I think we talked about this last week. We did indeed, actually. Yes, Elon Musk looking to sue people that won't advertise on X after he told people not to advertise on X. So now, unfortunately, one of the bodies that he is suing or was suing, he's not suing them anymore because they've imploded, was basically not quite a non-profit, but they just couldn't afford to fight the action. So this is something that happens in federal court. If it was a different court, you would have been hit with what they call anti-SLAPP, which is designed to make sure that rich people can't sue people into bankruptcy, kind of a thing. So there's one less party that he can sue, and he was doing a little bit of what they call judge shopping. So they're like, "I will sue in this jurisdiction over here because I know this judge. He will look after me." Fairly common practice in the States. Unfortunately, the judge that he wanted had shares in Tesla, which is fine. I mean, Musk was all over that. Yeah, my friend, kind of a thing. However, the same judge, also had shares in Unilever, which he is suing So the judge had shares in two of the parties on either side of the case. So he just put his hands up and went, "Nope, I'm not handling it." So Musk is without his judge of choice. So we'll have to see where it goes. I mean, it's a ridiculous legal action. So we'll see. But again, he will waste money on this stuff and he doesn't care.
Our third and final Musk story today is the image generator Grok. Oh my God. I'm looking at one of the images from Grok in this news story, but tell me about it and then I'll tell you the image I'm looking at.
Yeah, well, Grok is it is the chat GPT of Musk world. And the whole thing is that, it's going to be anti-woke. You can say what you want. It's the marketplace of ideas. It's all the stuff that he promised Twitter would become, and of course didn't, because once you take away the option or rather, when you take away the necessity for people to behave themselves, people stop behaving themselves, and a lot of people that never had any intention of behaving themselves tend to join and ruin the place for everybody, which is kind of what happened. So now if you go into Grok's image generator, you can pretty much say whatever the heck you want. And
no limits.
No limits, as Two Unlimited themselves once said. So yeah, there's some very wacky stuff appearing. Well, I won't even go into descriptions. If that's something you want to look up, maybe on your own time.
The one I'm looking at, and when I saw it, I went, "Oh my goodness!" Okay, so it's basically it's the cockpit of an aircraft with Donald Trump in the captain's seat and Kamala Harris in the first officer's seat, and they're flying towards a formerly famous set of towers in New York.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh God! I mean, who came up with that in the first place? And then the computer is able to do it. But sorry, just because I like arguing.
Yeah.
Can you actually write that into an AI to say, "Don't be doing stuff like that. It's bad taste"? I mean, where do you start with a list like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question.
Yeah. Well, anyway. Now, listen. As always, thanks for keeping us up to date with all of the news this week.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
That's about it for the show. There were a couple of stories still online that we didn't manage to get into the podcast. What else we got online, Niall?
So we've got some great stories this week. First of all, how social media is failing to protect young people. We've also got a hot air balloon trip to space and a conversation with SafeNet Chief Technology Officer Lorcan Cunningham.
You've got all of those stories and more at techcentral.ie for you. We're back again next Friday with a brand new show online and with RT Radio 1 Extra. And please remember to share our podcast with a friend. Just tell them to look up Tech Radio Ireland on Apple, Spotify, and now also on YouTube every week. Until next week, from myself, Dusty Rhodes, and from Niall Kitson, have a great weekend.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters, and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland, or listen with RTE Radio 1 Extra. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.